makes it good.
Okay. So welcome everyone to the Sagan Day, the annual Sagan Day celebration. And I'm going to ask Peter to just do a little backup on Carl Sagan. He actually encountered someone who didn't know who Carl Sagan was. So Peter, over to you.
Okay, just opening a couple of things so I can read it in the right order. Yes, so Lois, I don't know if you've got a picture, if you can share a picture of Carl, but if I share, it's just going to be what I'm reading, so that'll be boring. But
well, there's already one behind Brent.
Okay, good. That's perfect. I couldn't share the picture and read this at the same time. Carl Sagan, 1934 to 1996. Carl Sagan was one of the most well-known scientists of the 1970s and 1980s. He studied extraterrestrial intelligence, advocated for nuclear disarmament, and co-wrote and hosted Cosmos, a personal voyage. Astronomer Carl Sagan graduated from the University of Chicago, where he studied planets and explored theories of extraterrestrial intelligence. He was named director of Cornell's Laboratory of Planetary Studies in 1968 and worked with NASA on several projects. An anti-nuclear activist, Sagan introduced the idea of nuclear winter in 1983. He wrote one novel, several books, and academic papers, and the TV series Cosmos, which was reborn on TV in 2014. In 1980, Sagan co-founded the Planetary Society, an international nonprofit organization focusing on space exploration, and also launched the hugely influential TV series Cosmos, A Personal Voyage, which he wrote and hosted. He also wrote a companion book of the same name to accompany the series. Another of his famous works, Pale Blue Dot, A Vision of the Human Future in Space, was the sequel of Cosmos and was inspired by the famous Pale Blue Dot photograph, which shows Earth as a mere speck in space. Sagan used the Voyager 1 probe photo as a leaping off point to discuss humanity's place in the vast universe and his vision of the future. He died of pneumonia, a complication of bone marrow disease, myelodysplasia, on December 20th, 1996, at the age of 62. 18 years later, Cosmos was brought back to TV, this time with Neil deGrasse Tyson, taking on hosting duties and getting a whole new generation of viewers excited about what lies beyond the boundaries of Earth's atmosphere. And Lois, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Peter. Now, I'm going to share my screen.
Did you also click on that it was going to share the sound?
Thank you.
We've all been there, Lois, so
yeah, I'm
absolutely. Unfortunately, I knew
fine.
exactly what it was because I've done it so many times.
Oh, I have to say, thank you very much, Jennifer. That like I said, it's must be the coding.
So, Lois, I'll just give you a thumbs up if we hear audio when you start it again. Then you can
okay.
just keep going.
I think this.
From this distant vantage point, the Earth might not seem of any particular interest. But for us, it's different. Consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. the aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe, are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image of our tiny world. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.
Only the world would listen to what he had to say. Okay, well, while
Well,
we're
I'm
still
inspired.
good. While we're still waiting, well, for a few people, we're going to have some fun. We are going to have a quiz, and thanks to Jennifer, the quiz is going to be Who Said That? And the prize will be, let's
Oh, great.
say this book, the pale blue dot. Okay, I guess I should there. Okay, and one way or another, we will get it to you. So once more, I'm going to have to, well, I better go over the rules first. We're going to have to trust you to check yourself. And so keep track, don't put it on the chat or anything yet, but just keep track of the ones or the number that you get right. And then when we're finished, send the number to Peter in the chat. Don't send it to everybody, just in the chat, say, specify Peter and send him the number you got right, and he will determine who gets the prize. Okay, so once more, I'm going to share my screen and see if I can, okay. Okay, we'll have, I think, 8 seconds for each, or give you a time of 8 seconds. By that time, you will have seen all the answers and seen the questions, so it's really more than that. But 8 seconds will go by. I'll call time. If you don't have any answer down, then I guess you don't get any credit for that anyway. So just keep track of the ones you got right.
And you can just, it would be helpful if you just use the reactions. If you use a thumbs up when you're done, just we'll have an idea of if we need to give everybody more time.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Okay.
Well, that can't work while you're sharing the screen. You can't do the reactions while you're sharing.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
Oh, no, you can. No, I'm sorry. You can. Yes. Yes, you can. Sorry.
Okay, every carbon atom in every living thing on the planet was produced in the heart of a dying star. Who said that? Was it Neil deGrasse Tyson, Carl Sagan, or Brian Cox, or Edmund Hubble of the famous Hubble telescope? 8 seconds. Time's up.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Brian Cox is the answer. Okay, number 2. We live in a society that is exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. Who said that? Isaac Asimov, Richard Dawkins, Bill Nye, or Carl Sagan? 8 seconds. Time's up.
Oh, I got it right.
Okay, next question. The high-minded man must care more for the truth than for what other people think. Who said that? Aristotle, Bill Nye, Carl Sagan, or Richard Dawkins? 8 seconds. Time's up. Aristotle. Okay. The natural world is a package deal. You don't get to select which facts you like and which you don't. Who said it? Neil deGrasse Tyson, Edwin Hubble, Brian Cox, or Bill Nye? 8 seconds. Time's up.
Ah,
Bill Nye. Okay, we're just an average breed of monkey on a minor planet of a very average star, but we can understand the universe. That makes us something special. Who said that? Was it Charles Darwin? Was it Stephen Hawking? Or Albert Einstein? Or Richard Dawkins? 8 seconds. Time's up. It was Stephen Hawking. Okay. Next question. We spend the first year of a child's life teaching it to walk and talk, and the rest of its life to tell it to shut up and sit down. There's something wrong there. Who said that? Was it Carl Sagan, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Isaac Asimov, or Bill Nye? 8 seconds. Time's up. Yeah, kind of sounds like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Okay, somewhere, something incredible is waiting to be known. Who said that? Aristotle, Carl Sagan, Edwin Hubble, Stephen Hawking. 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Carl Sagan. Okay, I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. Who said that? Isaac Asimov, Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Albert Einstein? 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Albert Einstein. The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. Who said that? Stephen Hawking, Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Richard Dawkins? 8 seconds. Time's up. And of course, it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. The chances of each of us coming into existence are infinitesimally small. And even though we shall die someday, we should count ourselves fantastically lucky to get our decades in the sun. Who said that? Was it Bill Nye, Richard Dawkins, Carl Sagan, or Edwin Hubble? 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Richard Dawkins. It is of interest to note that while some dolphins are reported to have learned English, up to 50 words used in correct context, no human being has been reported to have learned Dolphinese. Who said that? Was it Bill Nye, or Brian Cox, or Richard Dawkins, or Carl Sagan? 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Carl Sagan. Equipped with our 5 senses, along with telescopes and microscopes and mass spectrometers and seismographs and magnetometers and particle accelerators and detectors sensitive to the entire electromagnetic spectrum, we explore the universe around us and call the adventure science. Who said that? Stephen Hawking, Richard Dawkins, Edwin Hubble, or Brian Cox? 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Edwin Hubble. Those people who think they know everything are a great annoyance to those of us who do. Who said that? Was it Brian Cox? Or Bill Nye? Or Isaac Asimov? Or Richard Dawkins? 8 seconds. Time's up. It was Isaac Asimov. The good thing about science is that it's true, whether or not you believe in it. And who said that? Carl Sagan? Richard Dawkins? Stephen Hawking? Or Neil deGrasse Tyson? 8 seconds. Time's up. Neil deGrasse Tyson. You cannot claim that there was not a Big Bang because you can fucking see it. Who said that? Was it Carl Sagan? Or Brian Cox? Or Richard Dawkins? Or Neil deGrasse Tyson? 8 seconds. Time's up. And it was Brian Cox. Okay, that's all of that quiz. So write in the chat, write the number that you got correct. Send it only to Peter, and he will be checking on who won the book. Okay, one more really quick game, and then we'll get to the highlight. So we can't have exactly a door prize. So I was trying to figure out how we should do that. So I decided that we'll just pick a number. And how we'll do this is keep Peter busy. I'm going to write down a number between 1 and 100. And I will send it to Peter, and he will check and see which of you comes the closest. Okay, pick your number between 1 and 100.
Is
And
it an integer?
Yes, an integer. Thank you, Larry. Oh, yes. Okay, so pick your integer between 1 and 100. Put it in the chat and send it to Peter. And he will figure out which one comes the closest. So, Peter, do we have a winner for the quiz?
I
You're
just
muted.
need to confirm, is there anybody else who needed to send me their total amount correct in the quiz?
Well, I was too embarrassed to send mine.
Oh, it can't be, I'm gonna get fired as co-host if I like, oh, it's really embarrassing. So, okay. Okay, so yes, I believe we do have a winner, Lois. Do we need a
Okay.
drum roll or something, or fireworks, or?
I wish we had that. I should have thought of that.
Vince with 8 correct is what
Wow.
I,
Oh,
and I know there's
Thank
one of
you.
you, there's somebody who
Thank
got
you.
7 out there is going, so close.
ah,
Way to
Thank
go,
you.
Vince.
Thank you. I wish to thank my public,
Okay, Vincent.
But, and no, just scratch that. I'm kidding. I just.
Okay.
Okay. Lois, if you sent me the number, I didn't get it, and I've got everybody else's now, which is kind of difficult.
Oh,
because
that
now
would
I need
make
to
it
go back.
difficult, wouldn't it? Well,
Yeah.
I'd better do that.
How many did you get right, Vince?
8.
Ooh, I only got 5.
I'm shocked, actually. Some of them were guesses, and some of them were stuff that I read off of Facebook and listening to the podcast. What's the podcast I listened to? Hitchhiker's Guide? No, not Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Oh, I forgot what it was. Jeez, I'm terrible.
Okay, last chance to put your number guess in, your integer between 0 and 100. Was it correct, Lois? I will go through the numbers now.
Okay, well, we will proceed. So we have come to our main event, and I'm just thrilled to be able to introduce our 2 astronomers or amateur and or professional astronomers. And I will see if I can get them, if I can. I've never used Spotlight before, so we'll see what happens.
You'll be able to spotlight one of us.
Let's see. Have to find you on the list first before I can.
So if we talk, it should pop between both of us when we're talking.
Oh, okay. Well, it's the different list that I've got to find. Oh, okay. Okay, so I'll
All right.
introduce Jennifer. Jennifer
Okay.
House.
Yes.
Jennifer is an education specialist at the Rothney Observatory, and that is owned and operated by the University of Calgary. Jennifer, would you like to say anything else about who you are, or should we just go on?
Just kind of a fun note. I was in a meeting this past week, and I was talking to the department head, Dave Knudsen, and he said that he actually met Carl Sagan. And so that was very cool to hear that story. So what it was is that he was a pushy grad student, is what he described himself. He said this was at Cornell. And so he said that Carl Sagan had the range for, and he said he cannot remember the name of the Russian scientist who was coming. So it was a Russian scientist with his big delegation, and Carl Sagan, and they all shuffled to get into this elevator to go up to the venue where they were going to have this big event. And so he said that he saw that, and he jumped into the elevator and squished in with him like that. And so everybody was very uncomfortable, and there's grad students in there squished in with him. And so how the Russian scientist started his speech is saying that, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and another welcome to the Cornell's pushy grad students. So he got recognized. But that was his one and only brush with fame with Carl Sagan. So that's my 7 degrees of separation there.
Oh, that is great.
Yeah, so I've been with the observatory for the past 15 years, and unfortunately, for the past almost 2 years, we've been closed to the public, and that's been very, very difficult on all of us. But the silver lining is that we've done a ton of research. Our tech gym has done a lot of work on their telescopes in this past 2 years. So it's been a very productive time, but we're really looking forward to having people to come back for in-person programming again. So you can go ahead, Jason.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Okay, Jason.
Hello? I don't know if no, I'm not I think Lois is still spotlighted, I think.
No,
Oh, well,
Nope. No,
I got
I
you both
see me.
up there now.
We can
Oh,
see you
we're
fine.
both here. Oh,
yes.
well then.
So, Jason, now I don't know, Nishiyama?
Nishiyama, yep.
Okay, great. Well, Jason is the director of the Wilson Cooley Observatory, which is operated by the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, Calgary Centre. And in addition, Jason is a sessional instructor in the Physics Astronomy Department at the University of Calgary, my old job. And we are very fortunate to have these two with us. Jason, would you like to tell anything else about yourself and your work?
I actually moonlight as an astronomer. I like to say I'm a semi-pro astronomer. My day job is I'm actually a science teacher with the Calgary Board of Education, and I do the sessional work at the University of Calgary. And when we are actually open at the observatory, I run the Baker Nunn Telescope for public events. My research area is actually involves death. I study dying stars. My current research revolves around a type of phenomenon called a planetary nebula. So it's a star about the size of the sun to about 6 times the mass of the sun, and it's its penultimate death throes at that point. I can talk more about that later.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Jason. And now, Jason and Jennifer are going to have a conversation with each other. In a sense, we could say they're interviewing each other about their interests in astronomy and how Carl Sagan has influenced them. Take it away.
Yeah, and now I'm doing a technical thing, trying to
Yes.
okay.
Thankfully, we don't have any video with music in it.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. Come on. Not letting me get to it. All right. There we go. All right. So, Jason, as an educator and a scientist, how has Carl Sagan inspired you?
Okay. So, my interest in astronomy actually got sparked kind of before I knew who Carl Sagan was. If you see the on the right-hand side, apparently it's been a long day. The right-hand side, my parents bought me this book when I was the Stars and Planets book when I was 5, back in what will remain the early 1970s. And they're probably happy it wasn't a book on entomology, because I got hooked on astronomy. And as a child, it was kind of an interest. I had a small telescope and looked at planets and stuff. And then when somehow I managed to luck into watching Cosmos when it was run on PBS. I have no idea how. So my parents wouldn't have looked it up or anything. I think I may have heard about it through something or whatever. And so I got to watch. And my parents were kind enough to, because we only had one television, and my parents were kind enough to allow me to have the television for that 1 hour period of time every week, as it was shown. And for me, it was like, wow. It's like I had a, like I said, I'd read a little bit about astronomy, I'd looked through a telescope and all that stuff, but seeing Cosmos really changed astronomy into a science for me, and through Carl Sagan. So I'd always wanted to be an astronomer, and eventually I ended up as one, through the weird twists and turns that life makes. But it was through Cosmos that Carl Sagan, in his ability to explain things, really inspired me to study astronomy. I actually, at that point, decided, okay, yes. So I studied physics, went to university, started out in astrophysics, ended up in political science because of a nasty calculus accident. Then went on, got an education degree. Then I actually went on a few years ago and got a master's degree in astronomy, which is now how I'm able to teach at the university and so on. And part of that inspiration is just his ability to explain things. So as the educator part of me really likes, I aspire to be that good. I'm nowhere near that good. I've been teaching for 23 years. I can tell you I am not that good. But it's always good to have that aspirational thing to move forward, and being able to explain things to people. I like to tell people, I like to tell people, like, I spent a lot of time cramming that knowledge into my brain. It doesn't do anybody any good in there. So it's always good to be able to share that. And Carl Sagan's, incredible ability to reach the public and to explain science to the public really inspired me in my job as an educator. So that's where I'm coming from. I think Jennifer, you're a science communicator.
Yes.
How has Carl Sagan's communication style and delivery inspired you in your role at the Rothby?
So in my case, going back again as a kid, I absolutely loved to learn about anything that had to do with discovery, even the history of discovery, of discoverers, anything that had to do with exploration. And so I'm a real history buff, a Anglophile, you name it. I love everything to do with history, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, all of that. But what was wonderful is as a kid learning, seeing Cosmos on PBS for the first time, it was all about the future of discovery and just that very tantalizing idea that there's so much that we don't know. That's the most wonderful thing that you can say to a kid is, we know about this stuff over here, but all that stuff over there, we don't know about that yet. And kids love that. And so I certainly loved that too when I was a kid. So as a young person in the 70s and 80s, I watched Cosmos and I found it really engaging because of Carl Sagan's easy to comprehend language. And he had such a calm cadence to his voice. It was wonderful. And just, it was just so engaging to listen to him. And the language he used was always, you could always follow his narrative. And he had this wonderful way of creating this string of logical explanations for astronomical concepts. And it led you down this path, this wonderful narrative that he created. And so I believe that his most stunning of these concepts was, of course, the smallness of us on Earth and of human existence against the vastness of the universe. That was just such a wonderful thing for me to learn about and think about, at 11 years old or however I was at the time. So it was incredible as a child. For the first time, I learned about astrophysics, and kind of like exactly what Jason's saying, it really wasn't a part of the curriculum in Alberta at that time. So when we were hearing Carl Sagan's talk about astrophysics, this was for many of us the very first time that we were hearing anything about this field of science in any great depth. So Cosmos started out as a book and then this series on PBS. And I just want you to try and imagine, just trying even to comprehend the idea of the completely immense, vast spectrum of scientists who were inspired as young people who went on to study, all because of Carl Sagan and his wonderful way of talking to us in a language that we can understand. So one of the things that I learned from him was that kids all have questions to ask. They all have their big questions that they want to ask, and they deserve to hear an answer in language they understand. And that's something that Carl Sagan certainly inspired me to think about when I talk to kids. Sagan was also willing to speak to a non-scientist audience, and it was very unhip to do that at that time, trust me. And he did receive a great deal of pushback and disdain from the academic community and from his peers, because they saw no purpose in engaging with non-scientific lay people. But like I said, when you think about all of the people that were inspired because he was willing to step outside of that box, it's a wonderful thing to think about. So I did admire his willingness to explore notions and concepts that were even outside of his field. And like the now debunked triune brain theory, the whole notion of the lizard brain, and that we have evolved from that, the seed of our brain was actually a lizard brain. And then he popularized that idea in this his book, Dragons of Eden. So I think it's kind of fun now. I don't know too many scientists who would be willing to take those big leaps that he did. Sagan was prepared to not only dip his toe into evolutionary neurobiology, but he was prepared to take a swim. And I love that, the fact that he was more of a generalist scientist than very specific in his one area of expertise. So Jason, how would you describe the genius of Sagan?
My take is along the same lines. In terms of as a scientist, I mean, he was a journeyman scientist, but he wasn't he was brilliant enough as a scientist, but he wasn't, say, Stephen Hawking or Albert Einstein brilliant as a scientist. I'm going to get booed off the stage, no doubt, but but I mean, he was a good solid journeyman scientist. He was a planetary astronomer, specializing in the atmospheres of the planets. But where his genius was, as Jennifer was saying, was being able to communicate that information and other science information to the public. One of the biggest things that drives me nuts as a science teacher is how scientifically illiterate the public is. And Carl Sagan was able to, I'm not going to say dumb it down, but take concepts and explain it in a clear way that a non-scientist could understand. And that in itself is a form of genius that a lot of scientists don't have. When I was working on my master's degree, I had to read a lot of scientific articles, and I still do. And there are a lot of scientists out there who are brilliant in their field, and their writing is nigh incomprehensible by someone with scientific training, let alone anyone else. So being able to explain science to the public so that's less of a mystery is an incredible thing, that incredible skill to have. And Carl Sagan pretty much led the way in that, in terms of science and science communication, to the point where he's inspired probably an entire generation of science communicators. Fun trivia fact, if you didn't know, Bill Nye, when he was in university, took an astronomy course from Carl Sagan. He was in one of Carl Sagan's classes. I don't know if you've seen the latest Cosmos, of course, you've know that Neil deGrasse Tyson, who didn't actually end up going to Cornell, despite Sagan's attempt to get him to come there, but still remembered Sagan having him, come and showing him the university and all that. So his ability to, inspire these other people to go into science communication as well, is not only just part of his genius, but part of his legacy, I would say. And just his ability to see beyond. Now, sometimes he doesn't get it right, and that's the problem with any visionary, is you kind of go from what you know and go to what you don't know. But his ability to see kind of beyond where we are now, and thinking into the future. So this is a picture of them putting the golden record on Voyager. There was Carl Sagan, along with Frank Drake, were had a huge interest and really pushed forward the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and took it out of being kook science and pushed it into more mainstream science. I'm sure you can still find astronomers who think it's kook science, but they're getting fewer and farther between, especially since we've found thousands of planets orbiting other stars now. But this was sending a message. Now, the odds of any alien species finding these records, and on the Pioneer missions that went past Jupiter and Saturn also have there's just simple plaques on it. It's not likely to happen. These things will take tens of thousands of years to get to the next star over, and they're not even going that way. But to have that foresight that at some point something could find it, and they'll find this record, which has nothing to do with they'll be able to deduce what the thing was for, because you don't just throw things into space because it's cool. So they're going to know it was for science, and they can look at the instrumentation and figure out what it was supposed to be looking at. But then they'll find this, which has nothing to do with science at all. but everything to do with telling them about us and who we were. Because if the odds of this, if it is found, it's not going to, there aren't going to be people left, or it'll evolve into something else. It'll be millions of years in the future. And that's a kind of a vision that people like Carl Sagan have, and Carl Sagan had. And I'm rambling now, so I will move on. So Jennifer, have you used any of Sagan's quotes or narratives in your programming?
Yeah, I thought that was great. Some of the quotes that you included in your quiz, Lois, were some that I use all the time. So of course, pre-COVID, we had kids out doing programs at the observatory. Lots of times they would be there at night and they'd get a chance to look through a telescope. But in those evenings when it was very cloudy and we were waiting the clouds to move off before we were able to do any observing, I would always pull out my favorite Sagan quote, which is, "The universe is not required to be in harmony with human ambition." So we could really want it to clear, but we got to wait for the atmosphere to do its thing. So, and then during all of the frequent and inevitable discussions on aliens that I've had with many grade 6 classes, I would share that the universe is a pretty big place. If it's just us, it seems like an awful waste of space. And I wanted students to really think big and explore their notions about what humans are within the context of an immense universe. And ironically, Carl Sagan, in his own exploration, that we are just, when he talked about this analogy of that we are a speck of dust, or just talk about all of the grains of sands analogies that he uses, I think he's in many ways creating a humanity in space, that now we are starting to think about us in terms of how we understand ourselves on Earth. And then we can, in that way, we can use that understanding to try and understand the vastness of space. So one of the things too that I like to say, especially to the younger ones, is when they're about to look through the telescope and maybe look at something fabulous like Saturn, I would say somewhere something incredible is waiting to be discovered. And like I said, kids love that. They love that notion of discovery, and that they're going to be the ones that are going to be doing the discovery. They like that. So this was really the gift that Carl Sagan shared, is that he was such a great communicator and an emissary for science. And he was able to paint these pictures of the future and of scientific endeavor, and really get us in touch with this idea of there being endless potential about what we can learn. And so I continue to be inspired when I think about his words and how he was able to engage people. And so it's all these years later. So what are we now? 20 years later, 30 years later, we're going to still be talking about Carl Sagan in the same way. So Jason, Sagan was a prolific writer. What do you think was his most impactful text?
Now, for me, I think in terms of overall, his most impactful text would have been Cosmos, because it's probably the one that's most well known, and probably for most of the public was the one that introduced science. And the science is a process. That's an important thing that people seem to forget about science, is that science is a process. It's not all the knowledge that science has given us. That's knowledge, and that's cool and all that, but it's also very fungible in that it changes as we learn more stuff. And the reason, what helps us keep that all sorted out, is the actual process of science. And through Cosmos, he explained quite clearly the process of science to the lay public. And that being said, probably my favorite work of his is Demon Haunted World, but it's not as well known as his more popular work, The Cosmos. There. Now, when we were getting this ready, this is actually a screen capture. There's in the academic world, there's databases that index all of the various articles in that. This particular one's called the ADS data system. So it's the NASA Harvard Astronomy data system. You can Google it, it's free to use. And it indexes all the major journals for physics and astrophysics. It also indexes books. So if you have a book that's astronomy related or astrophysics related, it's indexed in there. my books in there. I'm proud of that. My life is complete now. I've been indexed. So when we were preparing this, I naturally went to, because Carl Sagan was a planetary astronomer, and I'm a stellar astronomer. I study stellar evolution. So I haven't had to really read a lot of his work, his academic work, because it's not in my field. And so I went, let's take a look and see what's out there. So I went and typed his name in, and this is kind of the first chunk of the page. If you look at the top where it says authors, it says Sagan C. There's 659 works attributed to C. Sagan, and I looked at it. It's basically there is only one C. Sagan in the thing. It's Carl. The first thing I found striking was, if you look, the first entry there is 2020. That's the name of whatever journal that's out of, and then how to find it. So this is the first thing that struck me. Is like, well, the man's been dead well over almost 2 decades now, and he's apparently still writing journal articles. So I actually pulled the journal article down. What's happened was the authors had actually used a fair chunk of his data, so they, I guess, convinced the journal to let him be a co-author. Who knew you could do that? Anyway. However, the thing that's interesting for me on this picture, if you look over on the right-hand side, it kind of shows how many publications were done in a given time frame, and it refers to refereed publications. So those are the scientific articles that were published in a peer-reviewed journal, and then non-refereed, which would be books or anything, or things in Scientific American and stuff like that. And this is for Carl Sagan. And as you can see, his productive years, of course, were around the times of the Voyager spacecraft, for obvious reasons. However, you can see that almost half his writing is non-peer reviewed. He did a lot of work in things that weren't intended to be read by just scientists, but were intended to be read by the public. And that's probably quite unusual. If you were to pull up some other scientist at random, the amount of non-refereed works would probably be considerably lower. So the fact that Carl Sagan wrote a lot of works for public consumption also was part of his genius of being able to outreach science to the public and promote science in the public. So I'm going to go now. Jennifer, speaking of books, Contact is one of Sagan's most popular novels. What did it tell us about Sagan's extraterrestrial predictions?
So the movie Contact was released in 1997, and it was scientifically based fiction on how contact with extraterrestrial life might occur. And what was new and somewhat revolutionary in this film was that how the discovery of alien life was revealed scientifically using the technology of radio astronomy. In films like The Day the Earth Stood Still and The War of the Worlds, it created fear because the alien was coming to Earth. And that certainly fit very well with the notion of Earth being at the center, or important enough that alien life would somehow seek us out and come and land on our planet. Contact followed a narrative that we are legion, but amongst many galaxies and many life forms. And Vega was home to alien neighbors, and we just had to tune into the right frequency to discover them. So I reference this movie a lot to visitors to the observatory and say, I want to be clear about how the movie portrayed radio astronomy, because it's actually not quite like that. You can't hook up a set of headphones to a radio telescope and listen to alien signals. So it's not quite like that. But I think this was a notion. They created this visual because they thought maybe people could understand a little bit more about exactly how it's done, because I think if they were trying to explain exactly how radio astronomy works, they'd probably spend half the film explaining that. It would be like Matrix all over again. So how Earthlings how we're actually going to discover alien life will be some sort of unexplained energy source flashing or behaving in a way that does not make sense. And then we astronomers will be debating its origin for several years before acknowledging that it's an alien life force. So it won't be as dramatic as something landing on the Earth and saying, you know, take me to your leader. It'll be more of this trying to understand why a light thousands of light years away is behaving a certain way, and then we can determine whether or not it's a natural phenomenon or something that's created or manufactured. So it'll be less exciting, I think, in the long run. So Jason, can you share some of the highlights of the contribution that Carl Sagan made to the field of astronomy?
Okay, so like I said, apart from the kind of the gross overview of what he'd done, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of what Carl did, because we work in different fields. Scientists specialize, and a lot of people don't realize that. As a completely unrelated, semi-related aside, I had a buddy phone me up a few years ago asking, he said he found a blue lobster, and they asked me if they were rare, and I went, how the heck should I know? And he went, well, you're a scientist. Yeah, okay, I'm the wrong kind of scientist. But I mean, one of the things I've learned as I've progressed through academe is that the further you move along, you know more and more about less and less. And so I did have to look up a little bit of what where most of Carl's work was. And Carl's main work was actually in planetary atmospheres, which makes sense when you think about his work on Earth about around nuclear winter and you know, the greenhouse effect and all that. But I found interesting was, now I remember from from Cosmos, he's discussing, you know, how, you know, Venus was this huge mystery, and then then you know, with radio astronomy, they discovered that it was hot. What he failed to mention was he was the guy who did that. He's one of the first people to observe Venus in radio light, and determine from, and there's a way of doing it by looking at the black body, taking the radiation coming from Venus and putting it against black bodies, and you can work out how hot it is. We do that with everything in astronomy, really. And he basically showed that the place was extremely hot. You know, don't step outside, you'll trip into the pool of the molten lead. So that is actually pretty important piece of information that he did come up with. He was also a major influence in planetary astronomy throughout the 70s and 80s because of his role with the Voyager and Pioneer missions. And his work was around the planetary atmospheres. So the atmosphere of Jupiter, understanding what its composition, how it worked. Same with Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Titan, which is a moon of Saturn and has an atmosphere. So that's kind of where his scientific legacy is. Like I said, he wasn't like Stephen Hawking, where, you know, he's had these brilliant theoretical visions of the universe. He was very much just a journeyman astronomer who, you know, slowly, as the way most of us do, chiseled away at our ignorance and provided us with a lot of great information about the bodies of our solar system. This fact stuck to me because when I first watched Cosmos back in the 80s, I didn't know enough. But I have it on DVD, and I've actually got it saved on our NAS server here, so I can watch it anytime I want. In the Lives of Stars, he actually mentions some masses for stars, and now, of course, since I'm much older and, you know, gone to university and learned all this stuff, he got it all completely wrong. But it's okay. He was a planetary guy. I'm sure when I'm teaching planetary astronomy, I mess things up all the time, because we all specialize. So, Jennifer, what do you think is the greatest legacy of Carl Sagan?
So I think Sagan's influence is quite vast and significant. His words were universal, and that any human was capable of learning and understanding the universe. It's quite awe-inspiring that he would speak without prejudice or restriction. And the cosmos is rich beyond measure. I mean, what a wonderful idea. And he talks about science as the body of knowledge, but it's also a way of thinking. And so science is the future. And so all of these grand ideas were explored by Sagan. And the these are mantras or missions that we can all follow. In his book, Demon Haunted World, Science, A Candle in the Dark, he explores the future of science and technology while debunking the myths of pseudoscience. At times in this text, Sagan was really quite cynical of humanity and fearful for the future. And it turns out he was right with some of his predictions as we are experiencing this strange time that we're in right now, where there's such a lot of anti-intellectual and anti-science sentiment in current public discourse. And so this rejection of logic and scientific process is really concerning. And yet, you know, in many ways, especially in this text, Carl Sagan did predict that this was coming our way. And he did warn us that our undoing will be superstitions, greed, and stupidity. And yeah, so I'm sure that some of this things that are going on in the world right now, I wonder what he would feel about that now. I wonder what he would say to us now after him predicting this back in the 90s when this book was released. And so I also wonder about his ideas now in this hyper postmodernist world, and that there's such a breakdown of colonial thought and colonial science. It would be certainly a brave new world for him as well in some of our diverse ideas, and are opening up the idea of the idea that people of different genders can be involved in science. What a radical idea. People who come from different parts of the world that have different backgrounds can come and have wonderful contributions to science. And so it is a brave new world that I think that Sagan was steering us in this direction in a way, but he was also warning us against human foibles. And so we would do well to heed his warning. So I was just wondering if anybody had any questions about anything that we talked about tonight, or if you had wanted to make your own comment on, Carl Sagan and his influence on you, we'd be really happy to hear that, or we'd be very happy to answer your questions. So if you can put up your hand, or you could even put something in the chat if you want, and maybe Jason and I can help you out.
Yes, it's a good idea to use the raising the hand technique. Let's see, it should be along the bottom somewhere. Oh, under reactions, if you click on reactions, then there's a place where you can raise your hand, and we'll try to call on people in order. And so let's go ahead and put up your hand, and we'll call on each person. I guess I could take off the spotlight. So everybody is so overtaken by his communication. Nobody wants to communicate because he was so good. Oh, Larry.
Did Carl have any children, and are any of them in astronomy or science?
He did. He was married 3 times. And a couple of those marriages did involve children. I don't think any of them are, a couple of them are artists. And which is nothing wrong with that. The world needs artists.
Sorry.
That's
like my reaction. My reaction when I found out my daughter wanted to take psychology at university, I was like, okay.
Well, I don't want to put me down an artist. I mean, we talk a lot about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But what a lot of people are trying to push forward now is called STEAM, which you added art in there, because unlike Carl Sagan, a lot of scientists can't communicate to other scientists, let alone, average people. So if you have an artist who's able to, show things, that has the ability to galvanize the public, right? think about the, has anyone here seen the miniseries From the Earth to the Moon? Yeah, very well done. Just because Tom Hanks is a space nerd, but he's an artist, and it took an artist with his vision as an artist to do that, right? So I know a couple of them are artists. I don't know what. I don't think any of them are actually in astronomy, but I'd have to look it up.
Well, this is a good point to jump in and say the winner of our draw gets Carl Sagan's daughter's book, For Small Creatures Such as We. And, believe it or not, Jennifer, you won the draw.
Oh, that's great.
So you get the book.
That's terrific. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. So I see we got a couple more hands up. So
yes,
it's
Jenna Lee. Want to unmute yourself? And
I do. Thank you. Thanks so much for your really thoughtful reflections. I think it was Jason who talked about scientific illiteracy, which is something that, you know, it's one of my many soapboxes, and really has come to the forefront when we think about, you know, vaccination, of course, and all of the things that have been going around about COVID. But I wonder, because both of you are in education, as am I wonder, what do you think? Like, are the kids of today, are we doomed? Are they engaged in this kind of thought? I have a 14-year-old, and they're very, very thoughtful and interested in the world and exploring. Is that, you know, I guess it's not really a question so much.
So I just got, so Jason, I'll just do a quick answer and then you can, yeah. So my quick answer is I judge every year the science fair. And so even though COVID was on, there was a virtual science fair that I judged. And I just want to assure everyone that I did some projects, judged some projects for kids who are like 11 and 12 years old, and we're all good. They're going to be able to take care of us when we're all seniors, because these kids are brilliant and they know what the heck they're talking about. And they're, like you said, they're curious, which is so important. They're curious and they're quite knowledgeable. So yay.
For me, it varies depending on which classroom I'm sitting in. If I'm sitting in my Science 10 classroom, which is an academic class, it's actually not too bad because most of them they're wanting to be engineers and stuff like that. If I'm standing in my Science 24 class, on a good day, I'm glad half of them are there. And, you know, most Science 24 teachers, we have a bit of a joke in that if at the end of the class end of the course they've learned that seatbelts save lives, germs cause disease, and don't drink the bleach, we've probably won.
very good. Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't see any more hands up.
Well, so, Larry, did you have another question, or did you not click?
No, I didn't lower my hand. That's okay.
So I just wanted to say, just wanted to say one last thing. We do have some nice nights coming up. We've got some clear skies forecast in the next few nights. And so if you go out at about 6:30 p.m. and if you look due south, what you're going to be seeing when you look due south is you're going to see Saturn and then Jupiter in the sky, and they look beautiful. So it's due south, you're going to see Saturn, then Jupiter. Jupiter is the brighter of the two, a little bit bigger. And how you know that you're looking at a planet and not a star is that a star twinkles, whereas a planet will look like a flat disk of light. But if you go out early enough, then you're also going to see in the west that Venus is setting on the western horizon at about 6:30. So sundown is about 5 p.m. So if you got out at 6:30, you should be able to see Venus, Saturn, and Jupiter in the sky. And it's quite a spectacular show. And with any luck, we might get some more action from the aurora again. And then you can get out, you got to really love astronomy to be out at 6 a.m. looking for aurora, and I think that's wonderful that people are willing to do that. But yeah, there's definitely lots of chance to do some observing coming up.
So that's tomorrow?
tomorrow, that's what's going to be happening in the sky. But as far
Okay.
as the aurora, there's a few really good websites. One of them is called Astronomy North. And there's a lot of really good forecasting sites that'll show you the action that's happening on the sun. And then they'll also be able to give you a forecast of what's going to be happening on the Earth, of whether or not we're going to be able to see any of the aurora.
Okay, well, that's great. Thank you. Now, we have an interesting thing coming up. We would like anybody in the audience who has something to just tell us about how Carl Sagan influenced you. And so Peter is going to manage this because he has a rather interesting approach to doing this, to starting this. So Peter, do you want to take over and explain your little process?
Okay, sure. Thanks, Lois. And I thought maybe we might do a little practice because it might be new to people and to get the full effect. So if you're not familiar with this is called a chat waterfall exercise. So you do need to have the chat open if you haven't done so yet, and you may need to grab the comments and just pull the little side thing right to the bottom so you can see the latest chats that are on there. And you want to make sure that you're set to send a chat to everyone, and you should have your cursor there. And the idea is that I give you something to respond to, you put your response in there, but you do not press enter until I say waterfall. And when I've given everybody time and we have our idea in there, I say waterfall, and what happens is we get this visual of all these words flowing together in a waterfall type effect. So we're gonna do a practice right now. I'll let everybody make sure you've got your chat open and you're ready to type a word in there and it's on everyone. And so I'm just gonna say, like, give me one word that's your reaction to penguin. What do you think of when you think penguin? A phrase or a word, and type in what you're going to say, but do not press enter yet. Okay, and I'll give everybody just a little bit of time to do that, and just to see how many are ready. You can give me a thumbs up if you put a comment in there and it's ready to go. I see quite a few. All right. So now you gotta make sure your cursor is again back beside whatever comment you made there. And I'm gonna go 3, 2, 1 waterfall, and we're gonna hit it and watch what happens in the chat. 3, 2, 1 waterfall. Exactly. All right. Now we've had our practice. We're gonna do it on a more serious thing. So we've been reflecting on Carl Sagan's life and his influence, and what phrase or word would you like to say tonight about Carl as a person, as a scientist, as a communicator, or as an influence on your life? So again, don't press enter yet, but go ahead and put your, I'm just going to put yours in, and I'll wait till I see lots of thumbs up, so then I know that people are ready with their. Okay, we'll just give people a little more time. There's still a few that are still adding theirs. Okay, and making sure you've got your cursor back now in the chat. And 3, 2, 1, waterfall. Very cool. Yeah. And if you miss some and you want to go back, you can grab the little slider at the side and slide back up the waterfall, so to speak, to see what everybody put. Yeah. Very cool. All right, Lois, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Peter. I haven't seen that before, but that's fun. Well, now, if anybody would like to verbally have about 2 or 3 minutes, excuse me, to tell us about some experience having to do with Carl Sagan, or what influence or impact that he had on your thinking. And so take a few minutes and put your hand up, and then we'll call on you, and you can have a couple of minutes to just to tell us all about your experience. I've had a few people that have told some rather interesting things, but must not be here tonight.
Everyone's shy.
I guess so. Okay. Well, in that case, we have another quiz.
Jim's got his hand up.
Jim's got his hand up there.
Oh, okay, Jim.
Okay, I just thought I'd mention the pale blue dot video and speech. That's really, well, just that it's really excellent. And I guess I'd also note that I did get quite a bit of sort of lay science stuff from before Sagan, like George Gamow and Biography of the Earth and things, and Isaac Asimov's essays. So it wasn't quite as much a desert is things sort of implied. Yeah, but in any case, to the extent that scientists did regard the public education as kind of pointless, I'd have to say they're very wrong. Anyway.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a mention.
Oh, Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, I just took a quick look at Demon Haunted World just a little while ago, and I've forgotten that how good it was. And I just want to refer people to, I think it was chapter 23 on James Clerk Maxwell. I've never heard anybody talk so well about, scientists that really didn't get any recognition hardly, and yet, were so influential. It's very cool. And he actually explains Maxwell's equations in an okay way for almost anybody to understand.
That's amazing. I have them on a t-shirt, but oh, thanks, Grant. Peter, did you have something?
Yeah, I just would say, so like my background is coming from getting so involved in the fundamentalist Christian world as from a teenager on till my adulthood that I just missed all kinds of science. I just was incredibly scientifically ignorant. And so I didn't discover Carl Sagan or cosmos or anything until like just in recent years. So it's probably only like within the last 5 years that I watched it. And what I love about it is, and Lois knows that she's seen this in me, that I can feel this just horrible embarrassment about my ignorance of science and what, kind of religion did to me as far as like using all my energy and keeping me away from that. But what I absolutely loved about watching Cosmos was I didn't know any of that stuff, but somehow I didn't feel like I was made to feel bad about not knowing that stuff. I felt like I was just like a child discovering it for the first time. And I love that what you said about STEM turning into STEAM, by the way, was that Jason said it, because yeah, we need artists too. we need those people who have, like, and Carl had a gift to artistically express science then and get it out there. So that's what I really appreciate about it, because I sometimes am really quiet in things like these because I am. And by the way, I'm just like really embarrassed, but my score was only like 3 correct on the quiz. So that just shows. But you know, the thing about science is that it's okay not to know, and we're on this journey of discovery. And I just love the way that it was presented that way. So that's personally what it meant to me, his show, and yet more to discover about his writings.
Thank you, Peter. That is great. I've heard several people say that watching Cosmos did have an effect on their deconversion when they began to understand what science was all about, and what that, you know, the universe is so big, and so, you know, it makes us look small, and how in the world would a creator care about the pale blue dot? And it has affected people in their beliefs, or losing their beliefs, which is fine. Okay. Well, in that case, speaking of the demon haunted world, this is the prize in our next quiz. And this is just a regular kind of quiz, questions with 4 possible answers. So we'll run this exactly the same as the last one. I might even give you 10 seconds on this one. Might take a little longer. So this will be facts, and I will have to share my screen again and see if I can find that quiz. Oops. I don't think I properly had it ready, so. Okay. How much do you know about astronomy and astronomers? Oh boy. Well, we know more than we did about an hour ago, that's for sure. Okay, so again, keep your own score. Make sure that you know or can report how many that you get correct. Okay, let's go. How old is the solar system? Is it 13.7 billion years old, or 10.1 billion years old, 4.6 billion years old, or 897 million years old? Note that I did not say 6,000 years.
Are we supposed to enter this in chat?
No, you keep
No.
track of what you have correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll give you like 10 seconds to decide on this one. Time's up. And the solar system is 4.6 billion years old. Okay. How many Earths could fit inside the sun? Is it 385,000, or 673,000, or just 982, or 1.3 million? 10 seconds. Time's up. $1.3 million Earths could fit inside the volume of the sun. Wow. So Carl Sagan got his, all of his degrees at the University of Chicago. But how many honorary degrees were conferred on him by other colleges and universities? Was it 4 or 22 or 7 or 14? Okay, honorary degrees conferred on Carl Sagan. 10 seconds. Time's up. $22 degrees were conferred on him by other colleges and universities. Okay, which of the following is not true of Carl Sagan? He was one of the first to correctly hypothesize that Europa, a moon of Jupiter, has water below its surface. He discovered that carbon dioxide was in the atmosphere of Mars. He supported the legalization of marijuana. His work was critical to the determination of the high temperature of Venus. You got some information on this one earlier. So 10 seconds. Time's up. He did not discover carbon dioxide in the atmosphere of Mars. But he did support the legalization of marijuana. Okay, how long does it take for light from the sun to reach Neptune? Is it 5.5 hours? Is it 4.1 hours, or 8.3 minutes, or just 193 seconds?
Oh, gee.
10 seconds. Time's up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
4.1 hours for light to get from the sun to Neptune. What is, okay, I can't see this because it's covered up on my screen.
Do you want me to read it, Lois?
Would you please?
What is the mass of a teaspoon of the matter in a neutron star?
Great, teaspoon of matter. Okay. Is it a little more than the mass of a military transport plane carrying 5 helicopters? Is it greater than the mass of the entire human population? Or is it approximately the mass of an empty boxcar? Or is it equivalent to the mass of an average bowling ball? 10 seconds. Time's up. The mass in a teaspoon of matter in the center of a neutron star is greater than the mass of the entire human population on Earth. Wow. I wouldn't want to be in a teaspoon with the entire population of the Earth. In the early days of black and white television, there was interference or noise that looked like little white dots jiggling around on the screen. Some people called it snow, but that's me and my friends, we called it bugs. We want to see the bugs. So what feature of the universe caused that video noise on early televisions? Was it sunspots? Was it cosmic radiation? Was it neutrinos from the sun, or the cosmic microwave background from the Big Bang? 10 seconds. Time's up. The cosmic microwave background from the Big Bang affected black and white television sets. Okay, when Lawrence Krauss said, "Forget Jesus, the stars died so that you could be here today," what did he mean by that? Did he mean that our solar system did not form until about 10 billion years after the Big Bang, during which stars formed, burned out, and exploded? Or did he mean that the amount of energy necessary to make elements heavier than iron can only be found in supernovas? Or did he mean that all of the elements other than hydrogen and helium were formed inside of stars and were not available to make anything else, our bodies, until the stars exploded? Or was he just making an anti-religious joke? 10 seconds. Time's up. Now, some of these are true, but it isn't what he meant. All of the elements other than hydrogen and helium were formed inside of stars and were not available to make our bodies or rock-type planets as well until the stars exploded. Then, of course, the matter went out into the universe and was available for the next solar system that formed. Okay. Who discovered that the universe is expanding, and what was the evidence? Did Galileo observe the difference in intensity and color of the stars in 1609? Did Johannes Kepler, Johannes Kepler analyzed volumes of detailed data that had been observed by Tycho Brahe. The Hubble team of astronomers were able to obtain more accurate data from the Hubble telescope in space because it was not affected by distorting effects of the atmosphere. Or in 1929, Edwin Hubble observed that the more distant stars were moving away from Earth faster than the nearer stars. Okay, 10 seconds. Time's up. When Edwin Hubble observed that the distant stars were moving away from Earth faster than the nearer stars, that data showed him that the universe was expanding. Who coined the phrase billions and billions? Was it Brian Greene, author of The Elegant Universe? Was it Gerald Kuiper, Sagan's thesis advisor? Or was it Johnny Carson? Or was it Carl Sagan? 10 seconds. Time's up. It was Johnny Carson. Carl Sagan never said billions and billions. But Johnny Carson said it when he was teasing Carl Sagan. Okay. Well, that does it for that quiz. Now, write down in the chat and send to Peter only the number of questions that you got correct in that quiz. Okay?
Oh. I forgot to put the check marks and X's after it. Yeah.
Well, okay, we'll just send it to Peter and he will find out who got the most right.
Yeah. Let's see. And there are at least two where, gee, if I could have done the calculation in my head quickly enough, I could have figured it out.
Okay, and while you're getting that all sent away and Peter's analyzing it, we're going to have one more draw. And after that, we can just relax and chat with each other and ask more questions if we want to. Okay. And for the final draw, this will be the same as before. We'll number from 0 to 100, and likewise send it to Peter, and I promise I'll send the number first. But the prize for this quiz or this drawing will be Cosmos. Okay. Peter, do you have anything yet on the first one, on the quiz? You're muted.
Yeah, yes, I do. And people are already sending me numbers for the second.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Hang on. So
Okay, sorry about that.
we have Bill with 9 correct. That's very
Wow.
impressive.
That is
Yeah.
terrific. Okay.
Who is this genius? I'm impressed.
That Bill, you want to show yourself? I think this is one of my California buddies, Bill. Congratulations.
Well done.
Okay. Okay, I have written down my number and I will send it to Peter.
He probably doesn't want to show himself because you're
Okay.
recording.
Yeah.
I got 3 right out of 10. I'm pretty impressed with myself.
Mhm.
I'd like to just make a comment on with the Hubble actually was observing other galaxies, not necessarily. So I guess you could say stars, but it was like huge collections of them. So that's what he
Yes.
discovered was racing away from us,
Yeah.
except for Andromeda, which is racing towards us.
Oh dear. Are we going to
It'll-
collide?
Yeah, in about 4.5 billion years. So, got plenty of time to duck.
Well, the sun will almost be burned out by then, so.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Peter, the second one from me is the second number is the guess.
Yeah.
What?
Lois.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing about this Andromeda collision, has anybody run across something about how they know that the sideways motion is too small to avoid a collision?
It's a matter of, because one of the things I like to tell my students is the best thing as scientists we can do for future generations is leave our data. So we have some relatively decent data. Andromeda's close enough that over the 100 or 50 or so years we've got good positional data on it. We can actually have an idea of what its proper motion is. We can measure in astronomy. We can measure 2 types of motion. There's proper motion and radial motion. Radial motion is the easiest to measure because it's in our line of sight, and we can do that just simply with spectroscopy.
Yeah.
Proper motion, we have to actually watch the thing march across the sky. So it's the closer things are, the easier it is to do that.
Yeah.
And Andromeda is relatively close, but it takes
a galaxy.
For a galaxy, yeah. And it's getting closer every day. So from my recollection is that we have enough proper motion information that it's actually just heading more or less straight at us. The other thing to keep in mind too is that both Andromeda and our galaxy and M33, which is the other large galaxy in our local group, exert an incredible gravitational influence in the area too, right? So even if it was heading slightly away from us, our own mutual galaxy attraction will tend to pull us together. I've also read a couple of papers that have suggested that M33 will join the party about 6 billion years from now. So there's going to be a big elliptical galaxy here in about 10 billion years.
It's too bad we won't be around to observe it. It ought to be fascinating.
And I was just going to say, maybe we should have another meeting for then.
Okay, let's set it up. Okay, Peter, do you have
Okay, Lois. Well, we have a winner. With only 6 away from the number you sent me is Grant.
Oh, Grant, terrific.
My favorite number.
Congratulations.
So what was the number?
The number was 23 that Lois sent me. But if there was a most popular number, there's a lot of people thought 42 should be the number. So Lois, you just, according to all of them, you're wrong. They're right and you're wrong.
Uh-oh.
What was the first number that Lois gave?
And I don't know.
It was
at this point.
89, I think.
Oh yeah, it was 89,
Oh.
and yeah, somebody had Dee Dee had 80.
Jennifer
Somebody
had
got it?
87, I think.
Jennifer had 87. So
Uh-huh.
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay. Well,
Bill, you
this-
didn't get anything for doing such a good job. Why don't you take my book, because I've already got that copy myself.
I had a question about one of the questions, the one regarding the elements and creating humans.
Mhm.
I was under the impression that a star will create up to iron,
Yeah,
and that only a supernova will create the other elements above
that's
that.
right. No, that is correct.
Yeah.
But
If
when
you-
we think of making or creating bodies, we think of carbon and
They can go in the freezer. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I got it.
Yeah. Well, we do need a few things like, I think iodine is the heaviest element that is actually essential to
Thyroid.
Yeah, thyroid. Yeah, and as for supernovas, it might be indirect. Neutron star collisions seems to be
yeah,
yeah.
it takes a tremendous amount of
Yeah.
energy.
And I'd never heard of that as a possibility until after the this neutron star collision was detected via the gravitational waves, and then people pointing everything at the location and detecting
Mhm.
gold and stuff like that in the debris. Yeah.
Okay, well, this ends the formal work, and well, it's 8:45 and I just again want to thank Jennifer and Jason so much for coming and for staying with us. And if anyone has any more casual questions for them or each other, let's just take about 15 minutes and just chat and enjoy ourselves. And thank everybody so very much.
So I just wanted to say thanks so much for inviting us. And also, if you want to check out the Royal Astronomical Society webpage, and further to your question that you were just talking about, this is quite fascinating work that's being done by an astronomer called Sun Kwok. And his latest book I've put in the chat if anybody wants to check that out.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Well, and Jason, do you want to tell us more about the observatory where you were the director?
Well, the Calgary Centre is Wilson Cooley Observatory. The Calgary Centre of the RASC. The RASC is actually a group of mostly amateur astronomers. Some professionals join because what a lot of people don't realize, professional astronomers also do amateur astronomy. So I mean, there's professional work and then there's kind of hobby work, right? So the Wilson Cooley Observatory is the Calgary Centre Observatory. So if you remember the RASC, you can access the site. The primary optical instrument out there is a 14-inch Celestron Schmidt-Cassegrain telescope. There's some smaller ones, and often mostly members will bring their own telescopes out these days and set up. And we have they have 2 meetings out there a month, usually for observing. So we have a NOVA group, which is New Observers to Visual Astronomy, and our observers group meeting. The RASC itself has general meetings the third Thursday of every month. I haven't been to one in a while because in one of my former lives, I was a reservist and I retired about 10, 11 years ago, thinking, good, I'm done, because my child came along, finished my master's degree, and then he decided to join cadets 3 years ago. So I'm busy on Thursdays now and can't make RASC meetings. But they do have a general meeting. Those are open to the public. So if you go to the Calgary Centre's webpage, there should be they're held down now with COVID. They're doing them virtually right now still. But when it is back in person, they usually hold them down at the central library downtown, across from City Hall there.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to talk any more about the what? No, I can't say it. Royal Academy,
RASC
Astronomical Society, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, the RASC, it's a national organization. There's about 6,000 members across the country. Like, I'm going to get this number wrong. There's probably on the order of about 20 centers. So centers are kind of like local chapters of it. Calgary has one, Edmonton has one. It's one in the Okanagan, Saskatoon and Regina both have centers, usually big cities. And it's basically just the purpose of the society is to promote astronomy as a science and as a hobby. We have a lot of other side things around that, like, dealing with light pollution and stuff like that, all towards promoting that. And it's a group for people basically interested in astronomy. And the spectrum of not, because people go, oh, it's astronomers, amateur astronomers, and that's a club, they're out there, and I'm going to feel completely out of place. The level of knowledge in the society goes from people with PhDs down to people who have a vague notion of what astronomy is. So if you're interested in astronomy, don't let it scare you off, because some people know a lot. Most people are very, very, very much like to discuss astronomy and learn about things.
Well, thank you.
Jason, I had just a quick question, because your specialty is the stars and things like that. You're also in public education. I'm really curious to know, like, is there a Coles Notes answer you have when someone just like, well, I believe that the Earth is only 6,000 years old, and you believe it, and it's just, you believe it and I believe it, and so let's just agree to disagree, like, as if, is there a Coles Note as like,
apart from my eyes rolling back in my head?
Yeah, I guess to the how do you know, right? Because I know because God told me or whatever, or
there's there's tons of evidence. The most recent comes from the Planck satellite, which was measuring the variations in the cosmic microwave background, and we can, from that, we get and this unfortunately starts to get where people start glazing over, because we can get what's called the power curve, and then we fit the power curve to that, and we find out that in order for that to work, the universe has to be 13.8 billion years old, plus or minus about 20 million years. That's an incredible level of accuracy on a number that big, by the way. But there's other things as well. Like, for example, and a lot of creationists, they have some vague notions, so they have counter arguments. One I've noticed they don't have a counter argument for is the white dwarf data. Back in the 80s, an astronomer whose name I forget, but I've read the paper. He actually, white dwarfs are all roughly the same. So, I mean, there's some size variation, but in terms of their surface area, they're roughly the same size. So they all cool roughly the same weight. White dwarfs are what's left after intermediate and low mass stars have died. It's basically a large chunk of glowing carbon floating in space. There's no longer fusion happening in them, but they're still hot. They used to be the core of the star, so there's still tens of thousands of degrees Kelvin. So it can only get rid of that energy by radiation, which it's limited by the amount of surface area, how much it can put out. So by measuring the temperature of all the white dwarfs you could find in the galaxy, we know that the galaxy is at least 10 billion years old because of the rate of cooling of these white dwarf stars. So that's another aspect. Of course, just even going to geology, if you look at the amount of uranium versus daughter elements in the Earth, the Earth's at least 4.5 billion years old. The sun's at least 5 billion years old. If you were to take all the stars in the galaxy and you work out their brightness versus their temperature, you create what's called an HR diagram, Hertzsprung-Russell diagram, and it's got a kind of a curve through the middle called the main sequence. That's where all the stars that are burning hydrogen in their cores live. Now, usually you see it as a schematic, but that actually has a bit of width to it. And basically what happens is when stars turn on, they pop on to the bottom of that, and then they slowly work the way up across it. And then they pop off when they stop burning hydrogen in their cores. So there's some width to it. and the sun is about the middle of that width. And if you work out the amount of energy it's using up and all that stuff and how much mass there is, the sun's about should have, when it started, had about 10 billion years of life. It's halfway through that, so it's about 5 billion years old. So we're, there's many different avenues of evidence to show that the place is old.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's that's about as Cole's notes as it can get without, charts and diagrams.
I've got a really
thank
simple
you.
example for that. Is I had a Christian school was at the observatory, and I asked the question of these grade 6s, how is the moon formed? And so this one little guy put up his hand and he said, well, wasn't that on day 4 that God made the moon? And I said, well, yeah, okay, if we go with that. I said, so, but what was the process? And then he was upset because now he wasn't going to be able to get off the hook that easily. He still had to tell me how the moon was formed. And so I've actually, I get challenged all the time, and it's always happens to be Friday night at 9 o'clock. Some kid says to me, but I thought God made the solar system. And so now I just say, go ask your grandmother, because I can't help you anymore.
Good answer. Oh.
So I have a question for both of you. What is the most exciting thing to occur in astronomy in the last 5 years, 2 years? And if you could, what do you hope for or expect to be discovered next?
I'm going to say jump right in, because I'm so excited about gravitational waves and the fact that we're able to actually collect that data, something that was considered impossible just even such a short time ago. And that the fact that it's within our lifetime, this incredible technological development, that we were actually able to collect that information. So what it is these are major events happening out there in the universe, big collisions, black holes colliding, and then these waves are traveling across space. And now we have the ability to detect those waves as they pass through the Earth. And it's an incredible installation. There's one in Washington State, and then the other one, I'm always getting them mixed up. I think it's Louisiana. Do I have that right? Is it Louisiana?
Yeah, I think it's at Oak Ridge. Yeah.
Okay, so these two installations, and so what it is it's two lasers, and they're lined up in such a way that when those waves go by, there's actually movement, and that's how they're able to detect it. And this is brilliant. This is such an incredible thing. So one of the things that's going to tell us about, hopefully, is that period of time between the Big Bang and when the first light appeared. So that period called inflation, that hopefully we'll be able to learn more about that period of time by studying this gravitational wave activity. So that's my wow moment for me. So what about you, Jason?
Well, I was going to say detection of gravitational waves. The reason why, as Jennifer was saying, the reason why they're important, apart from the fact that we wanted to prove, Einstein suggested they existed and relatively survived every test we've thrown at it, and this was the last one, and it all worked. But the main thing is the problem we have is we can only see back using electromagnetic radiation, so light waves, radio waves, that kind of stuff, to about 380,000 years after the Big Bang. Prior to that, the universe was too hot for light to move around, so we can't see anything. It's all just numbers that we've cocked up to describe what happened prior to that. The physics works, so that must be how it is. Gravitational waves aren't limited by that. So if now our gravitational wave detection isn't that good yet, this could be like 30, 40, 50 years from now when we get that good. But if we can get that good, we can actually use the gravitational waves from the formation of the universe to detect that period of inflation that we think happened. What happened during the, just before the period of recombination, when light was able to rush around finally. To tell you how impressive a feat it is, when a gravitational wave from two black holes merging, which is, as gravitational waves goes, is pretty powerful. The LIGO interferometers will detect a motion, and the laser beam goes down two multi-kilometer long legs. It's a big Michelson interferometer. Bounces off the mirror, comes back. They're detecting a change in the length of one of those legs that is less than the width of a proton.
Wow. That's incredible.
So I got a part B question for you. I assume if two black holes collide into each other, would any planets nearby just be turned to rubble?
Depends if they blow up or not. Most of the gravitational energy comes from actually when they're in spiraling. So when they're spinning around, and the reason why their orbits decay, despite the fact there's no atmosphere for it to slip, but normally when a satellite around Earth its orbit decays, it's because it's what we call space isn't as vacuumy as people think it is. The Earth's atmosphere actually extends out past the moon. When you think about it, it's pretty rarefied at the moon, but it's still there. But closer in low Earth orbit, there's enough there it actually slows the satellites down over time. That's not happening with the black holes, but as they're spinning, and this happens with neutron stars too, that gravitational energy, that when they generate the gravitational waves, that gravitational wave, it takes energy to do that, and the energy has to come from somewhere, and that energy comes from the orbital energy. So that's why they start to spiral in. I remember doing the math for this in my master's program. It's pretty ugly, but I suck at calculus, but I'm good at programming, so I was able to do it. So as they spiral in, of course, more and more energy gets set out, and eventually they either merge, and depending on how they merge, they might blow up, or they might just become an even bigger black hole. Anything in the area, if they just become a bigger black hole, most things in the area probably wouldn't even notice because the amount of mass hasn't changed. So the gravity will be the same. Like if we took the sun and squished it down small enough, we could turn it into a black hole. And if we did that, the only indication we had that the sun had become a black hole is that it's going to be dark. The amount of gravity at the Earth's orbit will still be the same because the sun's mass is still the same. Okay. All a black hole is that we've made something dense enough that the escape velocity from the surface is greater than light. So we can make anything a black hole. We just have to squish it far enough. We could turn any one of us into a black hole. We just have to squish it smaller than an atom. It's not particularly exciting black hole, but it's possible. But the amount of gravity would still be the amount of gravity that the object had initially. So that's why there's not black holes going around like Pac-Man around the universe, because if a 25 solar mass star blows up and leaves a 10 solar mass black hole, it's just like having a 10 solar mass star meandering around, right? You just don't want to get too close to it.
Wow, it's so fascinating.
I have to thank you, Jason. Now I'm thinking about a Kids in the Hall black hole of just crushed your head.
Yes. Okay. Well, we have reached 9 o'clock, and I have thoroughly enjoyed this, and I hope that my coding didn't cause too much trouble. And again, thank you, Jennifer and Jason. This is fantastic, and now I feel like you're good friends, old buddies of mine by this time. I appreciate that very much. And thanks everybody that came. Thank you to my friends in California. Appreciate that very much. And so I guess we'll say good night and keep track of the meetup page. And we'll see you again very, very soon. Anybody have a last word?
Just to thank you.
Yes, my last word would be, for such small creatures as we, the vastness is only bearable through love, which I quote from Carl Sagan. My favorite Sagan quote.
Word. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That's great. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
And good night.
Good night.
All right.